Welcome to As the Story Grows presents Albums That Matter. I'm Brian Patton, and today we are talking about an album that is not one of my favorites, and not one of my favorites by this band, but an album that I come back to often, an album that impacted me greatly at the time when I heard it, and that is the debut EP from Caspian, You Are The Conductor. Came out on Dopamine Records back in 2005. Before we dive into the album, I just wanted to say thank you so much for checking out this episode of As the Story Grows. If you aren't already a subscriber, go ahead and hit the subscribe button on your podcast platform of choice. Over on YouTube, Juan Garcia commented on chapter 327 with Jason Moody of No Innocent Victim. I hope NIV released that 7-song LP. Me too. I'd love more music from NIV. Over on Discord, we recently talked about how NIV got a shout out from Pain of Truth at FYA Fest. You can come hang out with us over on Discord. A link is in the show notes or at asthestorygrows.com. This episode originally aired on Patreon, so if you want early access to every episode of the podcast, more content like this episode, join us on Patreon. Again, links will be in the show notes or at asthestorygrows.com. It would be tough for me to put my finger on what is my favorite genre of music. My taste in music is always shifting, always changing, always evolving. And there are seasons where a style of music means more to me in that season than in others. If you go back through the decades that I've been compiling my favorite albums of the year, you'll see certain themes and variations pop their head up over and over again. Back in the late 2010s, I was really into the emo revival and the fourth wave emo scene that was happening, and just this callback to the 90s emo scene and early 2000s emo scene, which I loved and meant a lot to me. And that gave way to more space rock and bands like Hum and Hopes Fall and Failure and Spotlights, bands like that really took over. The podcast the last few years have really led me into this space of enjoying a lot of metal, a lot of metalcore. I always come back to hardcore as a favorite genre. I love shoegaze. I love electronica. I just have this diverse collection of music that inspires me all the time. And I go through seasons where certain genres of music mean more to me than others, or are just what I'm gravitating towards naturally listening to. But I think a constant throughout there, a genre of music I'm always looking towards and for and interested in new releases and the bands, is post-rock. My introduction to post-rock had to have been Saxon Shore's Replacement Driver from their album Be a Bright Blue. I'm pretty sure I came to this song via mp3.com. I feel like there had to have been a Burnt Toast vinyl connection in there somehow with Scott Hatch, who would later release the rest of Saxon Shore's catalog. But I just remember hearing that song, and at that point in my life, not really having an understanding of instrumental music or post-rock or anything of that nature, but that song spoke to me. Even now, I don't think that's the best Saxon Shore song or the best Saxon Shore album. I mean, it's their debut EP. But that song, when I hear it, it clicks. And I remember why I fell in love with that band, why I fell in love with that song, why I fell in love with this genre of music. From there, the discovery of epitonic.com really led me into post-rock, where I discovered bands like Explosions in the Sky, Tristeza, Do, Make, Say, Think, Godspeed You Black Emperor, even Sigur Rós, although they're not really post-rock, but they have that kind of cinematic building feel to their music as well. And from there, I just grew to love post-rock. And I remember there was a music blog at the time called The Silent Ballet. And The Silent Ballet was a post-rock and ambient music focused blog. And they shared music news, and it was the PRP or Loudwire for post-rock at the time. One of the things that The Silent Ballet did was release these free compilations that you could download. The Silent Ballet Volume 1, and then it would have a title. I used to own them all. I think they did 14 or so compilations, and I was a huge fan. It was a great way to discover new music. This was pre-Spotify, pre-Bandcamp. I mean, there was the iTunes store, but this was really the way that I discovered new music in the post-rock genre, and there are so many great bands that I discovered because of that compilation and that I became a fan of. One of those bands, and I believe it was on the very first Silent Ballet compilation, was Caspian. It was the opening track to the compilation, and they played the first 3 tracks from You Are The Conductor, which are Quovis, Further Up, Further In. At the time, I just thought this was one track. It wasn't until I picked up the EP that I realized that this was 3 distinct tracks put together as one. But I just remember when Quovis started, how just mind-blowing that track was. I was a guitar player. I am a guitar player. But at the time, I was plug the guitar into the amp, hit the distortion or gain on the amplifier, and just play as loud as you could. I knew quiet and I knew loud, right? You had your clean channel and you had your distorted channel. And that was how I operated as a guitar player. So hearing Caspian run a reverse delay or reverse reverb on the guitar track, it blew my mind because I didn't know about reverse delays, reverse reverbs. I did not have this effect background as a guitar player. I was pretty punk and hardcore in my guitar playing, just play bar chords distorted as loud and fast as possible. And so I had no context for how Caspian was making these sounds at the time. And it wasn't until a decade later that I really started diving into pedals and the different sounds and things you could do with the guitar that my mind was blown, that I finally understood how Caspian was achieving these sounds on the song. Quovis, Further Up, Further In do kind of work together as one song. Quovis is this intro into Further Up, which is the main meat of the song. Really nice melodic middle section. The guitars on this record, I think one of the things about post-rock that drew me into it as a genre was the guitars are melodic and they're singable, and these riffs are singable. And Quovis, Further Up, Further In, those songs got stuck in my head. It's one of the things I really liked about Replacement Driver, is that was a memorable guitar part that I could come back to. I like the cinematic feel. I love the building. I love the anticipation, the euphoria, the release, the joy of the music. But it was the memorability that brings me back to certain records and certain bands. And when Further In drops out, like the track kind of comes to this crescendoing end, and then Further In comes in with the 4 on the floor drum beat, the open hi-hat cymbals. I think one of the things that really spoke to me about these songs from Caspian is just they felt harder and heavier than anything else in the scene at that point. I had not been exposed to post-metal, and there was a trend with bands like Russian Circles and Caspian as their discography went on. They got heavier, but even as Caspian makes their debut, those elements of how heavy the band would eventually get rear their head, and you can see it on display. And I absolutely love how heavy Caspian is on this record. It strikes at what will happen later. The album's opening 3 tracks move then into Loft, which lulls you into a little bit of this sense that like the most chaotic part of the record has come and gone. Loft has a really beautiful melodic guitar lead that runs through the first half of the track before kind of coming down to this quiet midsection and then picking up with one of my favorite guitar motifs from Caspian. Just listen to this. Like, I just love that lead and that riff so much. For Your Protection is kind of this ambient breath. This you breathe in, you breathe out before going into Last Rites, which carries the ambience from For Protection. As the song just builds and builds and carries forward and has a real strong close as like the whole track just gains momentum and continues to build to the end before kind of dying down and ending on this really quiet guitar. When the band released The Four Trees, I was so excited to grab this album and listen to it. But The Four Trees did not capture my attention the same way that You Are The Conductor did. And I don't know if it's just that you hear a band for the first time and you are so excited and so just in love with them and what they've done that anything they do afterwards is a disappointment. At this point, I had listened to so much post-rock and discovered so many bands across the genre doing a variety of different things that The Four Trees kind of felt flat. I didn't love the way it sounded either. And so it was not my favorite. It's still probably not my favorite Caspian record. But I can never forget that feeling of listening to You Are The Conductor. And I happened to put it on over the holiday break, and I was just like, yeah, this record is fucking incredible, and I want to talk about it because it still means so much to me as a person who is a fan of a lot of different genres of music, and so I definitely wanted to talk about this album. Post-rock as a whole has been a genre that has inspired me. I just released some demos for a project called Educated Owls. That has a very spacey post-rock feel to it. I just think there's something about being able to convey emotion without words and convey a feeling and a longing and euphoria and anticipation without having to say anything. That is quite beautiful. I've gotten to see Caspian live, and one of the best live shows I've ever seen. An amazing band. And it all starts with this EP. Thanks so much for hanging out with me as we talk about Caspian's You Are The Conductor and kind of post-rock in general. I don't talk to a lot of post-rock bands. I would love to talk to some more. And yeah, it's just an incredible genre of music, and this is an incredible EP. And I hope if you've never listened to Caspian before, that this sparks interest and you go check the band out. Thanks for listening to As the Story Grows. Our intro music was written and composed by Jeremy Hunt. The As the Story Grows theme is by Bob Nana. If you like what you hear, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and give us a rating and review. If you'd like to support the show financially, you can join us at patreon.com/asthestorygrows. Be a part of our community and join the ongoing conversation over on Discord. If you enjoy this episode, share it on social media with your friends. Much appreciated, and thanks for listening.